All right, it's time for another video. This is really impromptu, but I have something to say. It's in response to the people. I have said a lot of people with my earlier videos, and I got some hate comments and hate mail. But I feel it's important because in our community, the Afro American community, we've been downtrodden, and I guess especially for men, Afro American men, we've been abused in the media so much that we cling to uh, basically what amounts to mythology in order to make ourselves feel better. And that's unfortunate, but I think it's a reality that I'm gonna check it every time I can, but I think it's impossible because it's one of these opinion based matters, and when people want to cling to opinions, regardless of the facts or whether reality contradicts their opinion, there's nothing you could do about it. And the case in point for that are the Hoteps and these whole Africans were the first American people. That's mythology. PBS did a documentary not too long ago based on scientific evidence and archaeological evidence that shows that the first Americans, what are known as Amerindians, or I like what the Canadians refer to them as First Nations or First People. I think it's more appropriate because they were the first people in the Western Hemisphere. They were neither. They were not. They weren't white. Most of them were Asian, and I think they said there's been recent evidence to show that perhaps some Europeans during the last ice age they may have been able to reach Americas from the east, but in no significant number. So the majority of the First Nation people are descended from the people who crossed the land bridge that connected Siberia to Alaska. That's just a fact. And again, it's based on scientific evidence and also in reality because when permanent contact was established between the eastern and western hemisphere, the people who depicted the natives of this hemisphere, they didn't depict them. They didn't, to me, they didn't look African. And there are, and I've stated this in the past video, there are dark people who are not African. So, for example, let's run down the list again. You have the Melanesians. A lot of them live in the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and Papua New Guinea. They're very dark-skinned people, but they are not African. They're a different race. They have different blood types, different facial structures in a lot of cases, and sometimes different hair textures. Sometimes they have hair that's similar to Africans. Other times they have straight hair. So, I don't get why people can't grasp this, but actually, I stated it earlier. They don't want to grasp it. They don't want to listen to evidence. They want to cling to mythology as a self-esteem booster. The same thing with the Hoteps. We talked about ancient Egypt, how recent DNA tests show that they were not sub-Saharan Africans. They'll never get over that. The Egyptians, and I stated this in the past, they treated sub-Saharan Africans rather poorly. Egypt wasn't a great society. Egypt had a system where a man was considered God, and everything and everyone belonged to him. They practiced incest, brother sister marriage, father daughter marriage, all sorts of perversions that maybe some of you people like that sort of thing, but it's nothing we want to emulate in the modern day. Just like things from the Abrahamic religions, we don't want it in the modern day. A lot of Judaic practices from the Old Testament, a lot of practices from Christian societies. We don't, of Europe. We don't want that today. But people like to cling to certain mythologies for self-esteem boosts, which is fine. Now, I had another comment on the Truth and Rights TV. Shout out to him. I don't know if he'll watch this, but he does a lot of good content, a lot of real content. But one guy, because he's talking about how Umar Johnson's banned from the UK. One guy comes on my comment because I compared him to Sarah Suten Seti and his protege. I think we all know who that is. The guy who was smart enough to be conned by Brother Polite. And let me say this again: anyone who was dumb enough to fall for any of Brother Polite's scams should not be leaders in the Afro American community. But one guy actually had the nerve to tell me Seti and the other guy aren't scam artists because um, they don't do what Umar Johnson's done. And actually they do. What Umar Johnson does and what he did was he demonized traditional Afro American religious groups such as churches, and you can criticize churches because a lot of them don't adhere to their doctrine anymore. They just collect money. They don't go against sexual perversion. They don't really do anything great for the community. So it's appropriate to go against a lot of these churches, but not when you're going to replace them with the same thing. So what SETI and the other guys do is instead of Christianity, they want to peddle Egyptian mythology to you and racism um, directed at the wrong people. And that's what they want to peddle to you. Just more nonsense, more mythology. And I'll do some videos in the future on Egyptian mythology because their religion was ridiculous. And again, it's nothing we want in the modern world. We we don't want people believing in gods like Set who um, eats lettuce that his like nephew ejaculated on, and just this gross stuff. What did Set also do? Set also uh, tried to corrupt Horus with homosexual antics, and Horus was born from a severed penis that his mother reattached to his father's dead body. We don't want this in the modern world. I don't. Maybe some of you people do, but it's a joke. So they go around peddling this smut to the African American community, and some people are eating it up. They're gobbling it up. And it's unfortunate because again it's mythology and they're doing the same thing, telling stories, telling feel good stories, selling fantasies and collecting money without building any institutions. And speaking of that, I saw the latest Umar Johnson fiasco reply to Tariq Nasheed, and I don't like Tariq Nasheed's mythological documentaries. It's again it's based on Afrocentric myths is what Hidden Colors is based on with some good information. Shout out to Sister Shahrazad Ali. She is the best example for our women this day and age. It's too bad there's not more like her. So shout out to her. Her information is good. These other mythology peddlers, these smut peddlers, like your Phil Valentines and your Ray Higgins, they're just smut peddlers. Just like Umar Johnson, because what Umar Johnson is the pot calling the kettle black. He's mad at Tariq Nasheed for not building institutions, but Tariq Nasheed never promised to build institutions. All he does is put out his mythological DVDs and his low budget. He collects money, produces his DVDs, and doesn't give a discount to my knowledge. I could be wrong about this, but for the people who donate to him, he doesn't. I don't think he gives them a free copy. So he gets his money up front, and he makes money off of the sales. A very smart tactic, and I don't blame Tariq Nasheed. And Tariq, if you watch this, I'm not insulting you. You're peddling myths, but you're doing a good job of. It's a good hustle and I respect that. Just like when he was pimping, and I guess after he was rapping. So what he did was he basically tried all the hustles until one of them stuck. Which again, I don't knock him for that. If people are gullible enough and stupid enough to fall for nonsense, they deserve it. Because a lot of times now with the advent of the internet, we could do our research. We could search things and look up facts. And if you're still being conned by con artists, that's on you. But for the haters who are mad at me for going against mythology like Africans being Americans, I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep doing it. Um, One guy's actually said you're not African American. I could tell you you're actually African. You have an accent. Well, I don't know. I'm a Miamian, so and then my ancestry.com. I already talked about that. I am a good chunk of me is Nigerian. According to that, I'm 22% Nigerian, 36% other regions, and 16% Ivory Coast, Ghana, 13% European. So, yeah, like yeah. So, but I am African American. Got a birth certificate to prove it. Parents were born here. Uh, Guess you just don't like my voice. I'm sorry about that, but I'm gonna keep exposing you charlatans and keep laughing because that's what this ministry is about: exposing bad and promoting good. But that's it for now.